I'm a one-girl revolution.
Hello and welcome to Another News. I'm your host, Rachel Bloomstrom. Today I'm joined in studio by local musician and activist Jill M. Stone, and we are joined from a distance by Cory Taylor, social science communicator. Today our main topic will be Christian Dominionism, so we will be talking about where did this ideology come from, what are they doing? What is their plans? And we're going to talk about where they might be weakest so that we will try to give you some hope, but it's going to be dark. So don't worry. We have at least one good news thing, but I know right now in the news, everything does seem pretty dark, and I'm very sorry for that, but we do got to talk about it. So go ahead. Let me introduce you to Jill M. Stone. Jill, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. You know, just constantly reading something new that's shocking.
Yeah, right. I know. It's like you don't even want to turn on the news anymore.
Besides Roe v. Wade, what is the one SCOTUS ruling that has really just like rocked your world? Like, what are they doing? How could they even do this?
I think I'd probably have to say the most recent, climate change. They just did.
Yes, stripping the EPA of power.
Yes, exactly.
That has such wide-reaching consequences, but we'll get to SCOTUS rulings. But oh man, Cory Taylor, how are you doing?
Hey, as good as you can be, I guess, considering.
Yeah, yeah, and you had to do most of the dark work this week. Well, just for this story, I did a lot of dark work too. It's all dark. Same question to you. What do you, besides Roe v. Wade, is there any of the SCOTUS rulings recently that has just been the most shocking to you?
The tribal sovereignty one, I think, was actually a very, very scary one, too. And it dovetails with the Roe v. Wade, especially because Oklahoma was particularly interested in getting that ruling so that they could prosecute anyone who tried to get an abortion on tribal lands.
Yeah.
Which is horrific. So.
Yeah. I mean, and Gorsuch even was super outspoken about it, which one okay thing I can say about Gorsuch is his respect for Indian sovereignty. And he led the ruling last year over saying, yes, half of Oklahoma does belong to the natives. Mm-hmm. And then to just see this, he opposed it as well, but that's bad.
The problem was that, though, that it only in terms of criminal prosecution, not in they weren't giving actually any land back. So specifically, in case you missed it, the ruling was to anybody who is a non-native who goes onto native land and commits a crime, they can be prosecuted by the state now. Formerly, it was only federal or native people's jurisdiction, and Oklahoma just won that back, and I don't even know, with Roe v. Wade, they weren't even asking to abolish abortion or to overrule Roe v. Wade, but is that even the same with the native jurisdiction?
I'd have to look at the decision itself.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
I read a few stories on it, but I don't have have them in front of me.
Yeah, I think there were some folks in Oklahoma, in the state that brought a case specifically to get those criminal rights to prosecute back.
Yeah.
Right. Because they didn't like not having them, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. So before we move into the main story, we did want to talk a little bit about the insurrection. Have y'all been watching it? I assume so.
I get my popcorn out every time they're going to be on.
Yeah. I was so upset. I didn't realize they were starting them. And I came home one day and it was on live. And I'm like, oh, no, I missed the beginning. Just like a movie,
Oh, yeah. Well, and the most recent one that they did on Tuesday was
Cassidy Hutchinson.
Devastating.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had to bump her up because she was in danger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they were trying to witness tamper, threaten her, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking to Cory right before we went on that Trump came out and said Cassidy Hutchinson was
desperate to go to Florida with certain others of the Trump staff and that she was trying to get a job with him. And he says, if I was so evil, why did she fight so hard to stay a part of the MAGA team? This is all documented in writing, except for Mr. Trump's accusation contradicts documentation that he had already taken former aide to the White House, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, Ben Williamson, for his post-presidential staff. So no, that's not what happened.
And Meadows is the one being accused of trying to intimidate her as well right now.
Yeah, he among one other person, I thought, right?
Well,
Yes,
I think it was one of his minions.
Yeah, and then one of the other things is Tony Ornato has since denied that he told Hutchinson about the car incident of Trump trying to, as Cory put it, GTA, the Secret Service, out of a vehicle to go to the Capitol.
Yes.
I mean, what a wild ride, right? Like it's one of those things that I didn't expect that. I expected a lot of interesting and horrific things to come out of the hearings, but I didn't think that we'd hear that Trump tried to choke out a Secret Service agent and steal the presidential limo.
Yeah.
That was something.
I'm just trying to imagine his tiny little weak hands that have never gripped anything hard out trying to choke a Secret Service agent. And the guy's just like, come on, sit back down, get in the back seat, or I'm going to tie you to your booster seat. That's how I imagined it happening.
Yeah, definitely.
But man, what? Yeah. So, so Tony said that she had lied about it. But then another administrative official, Alyssa Farah Griffin, shared a tweet that noted Ornato previously denied having a conversation that was actually documented in a book. She wrote, Tony Ornato lied about me too. During the protest at Lafayette Square in 2020, I told the then White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and Ornato they needed to warn press stage there before clearing the square. And Meadows replied, we aren't doing that. Tony later lied and said the exchange never happened, but he knows it did.
All of it could be solved if he just came and testified at the January 6th committee.
Oh, it sounded like, according to what was going on, like he was one of the most concerned. Wasn't he the one who sent the text message that says they're going to throw every law at the book at us if we get him to the Capitol?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if he can set a record for how many times he perjures himself once he gets on there.
What are the odds that y'all think that anybody in the government ever going to be prosecuted for perjury? Fingers crossed for the SCOTUS.
I think someone will. I don't think it's going to be anybody we know the names of off the top of our heads, sadly. I think that there's a lot of people who are very high up that should be.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think they're going to be.
I think they're going to go after for witness tampering, though, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that seemed like Cheney's demeanor changed a little bit when that happened. Like, who would have thought Dick Cheney's daughter?
The last bastion of going to save democracy single-handedly.
Well, no lie, Mike Pence had a big hand in that too, and it grosses me out because I don't want to give him kudos on anything. But what he did was really brave, honestly, by not.
The most amazing thing about that is that he called Dan Quayle for advice, and Dan Quayle is the one who convinced him to go through with certifying the election, which is absolutely amazing that we have Dan Quayle, of all people, someone I hadn't thought of probably in my adult life.
Yeah. But that was prior to the actual January 6th insurrection. Yes. And then during that, part of the move, from my understanding watching the insurrection, was that they wanted to pressure him to get out of there. So they wanted the world to see him run away and not get it done so that they could declare victory on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then somebody else, I think there would have been another person in line if the vice president was not available to certify the election. And it could have been somebody, more favorable to Trump to certify the fake electors.
Who would have been next in line to certify that? Is it the same as the regular chain of command?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been somebody in the.
Wouldn't have been Speaker of the House,
It would have been
right?
somebody in the House. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or would that-
Which is
sorry,
probably
not
another
Pelosi,
reason.
that point.
Yeah, which is probably another reason they're like, yeah, definitely kill her and Mike Pence.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering what would have happened if Trump had actually gotten there. Like, would he have tried to go inside? Would he have tried to climb the wall?
I feel like they would have carried him on their shoulders into the Capitol.
Very strange.
Yeah, I was definitely trying to picture that. Like why he was so adamant. I just think he wanted to see the chaos, which is why he was glued to it.
Yeah. Well, and I think like if he was going there at the head of an armed mob, that probably may have persuaded Pence. His life would have been in danger. You know?
I'm not sure Pence would have been swayed. I mean, Secret Service was literally trying to pull him into a limo and he refused.
That's true.
And presumably those Secret Service agents were responding to Trump's orders of get him out of there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it would have been interesting. I don't know. That's like the what we could write a alternative story.
Yeah.
An alternative like fantasy fiction.
I've been doing a thought experiment of what life would look like right now today had Pence fled and also members of the Senate, like what the world, because to the world, what would that have looked like? You know, like watching it, just imagine seeing like a 20 deep motorcade of people escorting the vice president and then putting senators on buses and getting them out of there. And then the Trumpers get inside the Capitol and claim it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, well, we came very close.
Yeah.
To a horrible reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we came way closer than. If you're not watching the hearings, you should be. Go back and watch them. It is, I mean, at first I was like, this is all stuff I knew coming into the insurrection and during it, because on TikTok, people who went there were posting about it. They've been telling us about it. We knew for months it was going to happen. And we all publicly saw Trump laying down the groundwork to say the election was stolen. He already prepared it before it happened so that would be an option to lay on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think there's what is sort of, publicly known out there, and then going through the process of this committee, they are really kind of getting into like the for lack of a better term, the nitty gritty of what could be charged, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's what's helpful with this committee is they're really like saying, okay, here are the crimes.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. I turned on the Daily Show to watch Trevor Noah talk about it, and he was like, all these people, they were like naming the crimes they were going to be accused of, and here the DOJ is still not accusing them. They're like, oh, take notes. They told you what crimes they were committing, because it was like, yeah. I'm so ready for Merrick Garland, but I guess there's new information coming out, and it probably is the smart thing to do to wait. But I wish we had been given some information or hope sooner. But, Hollywood is a reality show, because right now we've all forgotten the fact that Democrats are actually just like PR for the liberal billionaires. Like, they're not on our side either. Yeah. They just want to keep their power. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, we'd be bypassing the filibuster
or like getting rid of it. Yeah.
And Joe Biden would be doing what AOC is calling for him to do.
Yeah.
Biden keeps trying to get rid of the filibuster. This is, I think, the second or third time he's tried to float the idea, and it just
executive order.
No, you can't. I mean, it's
why Trump did it.
Oh,
try some force.
Right.
That's the problem. Democrats are like still trying to look like good. Just forget it right now. Stop the hemorrhaging. We got a government triage here. Pack the courts. Mm-hmm. Do it now. Mm-hmm. Executive order that filibuster. Get it done. Shove it through. I don't even care if they intimidate Manchin. I hope they do. Scare the crap out of that guy. F him.
Go back to his houseboat.
in the Potomac.
Yeah, well, actually, I would really like it if they'd confiscate that, and then I can just get it on in one of the what are those called?
Auctions.
Auction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, because you're trying to get a boat.
Yeah, this is the part of the show where I remind everybody that I have been trying to get a catamaran and manifesting it has not been working very well. So if you know anybody who wants to donate a boat to a journalist, disabled veteran, I would be happy to do that. And I'll tell you all the things that mainstream media can't do. And that's fine. And we'll keep bringing on experts and doctors, and you'll hear it all. So just think about me, please, Rachel Bloomstrom.
So which would be more fun? If you got a Russian oligarch's boat or if you got Joe Manchin's boat?
Well, Joe Manchin's boat is like way too big for me. I don't want to hire a crew. So
Probably the same with an oligarch's boat too. Those things are huge.
yeah, most of them are. There's a few that are smaller. So if you have over a 60-foot boat, then you have to actually have your captain's license. And that's really hard to get. So I need something under 60 feet, but even if it's over like 45 feet, I'm going to need somebody else to help me at least. And I prefer a catamaran because my dog's got arthritis at this point, so I don't want to ship rocking too hard.
How are those lessons going?
Well, I'm assuming he's not listening, but the captain there is sexist as can be. So if you're a woman, I don't recommend going here. He spends more time avoiding answering my questions than it would take to just answer them. And I verified with a couple of the other women. They're like, oh yeah, no, you're reading that totally right. So I haven't actually been out on the water yet. But then again, I also did get hand surgery. I was like, you know what? I don't like this guy. I'm going to take a minute, get what I need done, come back refreshed and not angry.
Awesome.
So we'll see. We'll see. Because as soon as I use up all my hours, I will be writing a Yelp review.
All right.
Good.
He deserves it. Like, it's bad. Yeah. Like, there was one day I went out to work on the boat. So those of us, if we go work on the boat, we earn hours to sail by, doing some boatyard work. Well, I basically didn't do anything but like scrub decks and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Except for the day I went out to a boat where we were going to be like hooking up the jig sail. And I've told them repeatedly, like, I was in the Navy for 5 years. I have my ESWAS. Like, I get that I don't know about sails, but I understand boats. And and I lived on one for 3 years. And he sent the directions for that day on what to do to all three men, but not to me. And when he got there and I said, hey, how come I didn't get it? And he goes, you wouldn't understand a word. And I'm like, first of all, that doesn't matter. Because I'm here doing the same work and I'm here to learn and you're not teaching me anything.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So if that gives you any clue to how I feel about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not, you should have asked for a refund on that lesson.
Well, it wasn't a lesson. I was earning sailing time.
Oh.
So basically, I bought myself 3 hours of sail time.
Okay.
Yeah. But, and the deal is like, I can get out on the water. And there are other skippers. It's just been kind of slow moving so far. But the damn part is he's the one who captains the catamaran every time. So if I want to get on that catamaran,
Oh.
I just got to go and not learn anything.
Oh, wow.
Did you have to actually swab decks when you were in the Navy? Is that really a thing?
Yeah. Yeah. Because the salt water, like when you're out sea, it'll rust the ship. So you got to freshwater clean it quite often.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
salt water is
I
corrosive.
imagine those boots are a lot of work.
They're big. Yeah, my boat was 505 feet. I served on the USS Hopper, DDG 70 out of Pearl Harbor, but I also did a deployment with the USS O'Kane, DDG 77, also out of Pearl Harbor. They're about the same size. So,
wow.
Yeah. But enough of my, sorry.
No, not bad. Not bad. That's cool.
Yeah. Was there anything else on the insurrection that y'all wanted to talk about before we get into the nitty gritty? Because there's some real bombshell stuff that came out.
I'm really happy that hearsay evidence is admissible in congressional hearings.
Yes. I was so happy over that. I was like, hell yeah.
It's been interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I know that there's more coming. I hope they get that. I guess it sounds like they're going to get that Pat Cipollone to testify. So.
Oh, yeah. And I can't wait to see this Alex Holder's, his documentary footage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like apparently a lot of the inside circle didn't even know he was interviewing the Trumps like during this time period. And he hasn't been able to release the footage because he didn't have a proper venue to release it. He didn't have the proper authorization to release it himself. So instead, he's got to, get with somebody. And I guess, who was it who picked it up? Warner Brothers? No, that's not right. But yeah, he's going to be releasing his documentary, and that'll be coming out later in the summer after he testifies, obviously. And so we're going to be seeing some never before seen footage, including direct interviews with Trump. And the question they left teased on that was, do you mind if I ask you about the insurrection? And Trump was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so what comes next?
Yeah, and it's all like raw. These interviews are raw. Like, they'll get the unedited version.
Yes, I'm sure they've all seen. Yeah, they've seen all the raw footage. We probably won't, but we'll get the goods. I'm certain. Get
the full cut.
I'm so excited to hear from Trump without even having been prepped by his people.
Yeah.
Because they got to prep him before everything, that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, of course, like Meadows I think he's done. Like, I think it's pretty clear that he knew what was going on and just completely disengaged. All of them.
Well, he was going to go to the war room in the hotel. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I mean, and it was Cassidy Hutchinson who talked him out of it. And it's like, wow.
Yes, I have found her incredibly believable and compelling. And I think it's interesting. Like, she's 25 years old. She looks like she's 30. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, so I'm not trying to insult her. But there is like,
there's a young 25 and then there's a mature 25.
Yes, she definitely is a woman who has experienced the world in ways that other people have not. And that wisdom is like presented on her face, and she is incredibly brave. Like being that young. So like your brain doesn't finish. So they've done some studies, and like until you are 30 years old, your brain is still kind of functioning off of what you've been raised with and focused on. But around the age of 30 is when your own personal ideas start solidifying. So it doesn't really matter how you were raised, especially if you can get more experience in the world. You're going to find out if your brain functions on fear or openness. And that's generally how we tell the difference between conservatives. That conservatives are a fear-based mindset, whereas liberal, in the lowercase sense, not the capital L liberals, but being liberal is an open base, is a less fearful mindset. So I'm interested to see, I mean, like the fact that she's doing this like at full risk of her life, because they've Trump has definitely had mob knockoffs of people before. He worked with the mob. They cleared out people in his apartments or hotel or whatever. So I'm interested to see who she grows into.
The people I'm worried about are the QAnon people, because they've started taking quite a bit of notice of her as well.
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw a story about that today.
Yeah, that's funny. I have some stuff on QAnon as well, talking about the oldest conspiracy theory in the world is kind of probably what you're also going to be talking about. But yeah, the anti-Jewish sentiment, QAnon built their ideology off of that. But yeah.
Very anti-Semitic stuff.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, which is easy to tie up all sorts of racism with it. Racist will be racist, won't they?
Yeah, I think they're equal opportunity racists against everybody.
Have you noticed how like all of these like very powerful, like gross white men like are also the gnarliest looking people? Like, how can you be a white supremacist when your face looks like the side of an old tree? Like you look like what are those knobby trees, where they have like they sometimes look like they have faces in them. I don't know. That's what they look like to me.
Yeah. That does bring up, I was talking to a friend of mine who's Jewish the other day, and one of the things that she mentioned was that the right loves to use the term Judeo-Christian values, and they do it in a way that they only talk about very fundamentalist Christian values, and it's really a way of Jewish erasure in that. And so there's inherent anti-Semitism even in the way that they try to discuss Judaism, specifically while.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm getting too far ahead of it, but something about the evangelicals being such big Zionists, part of the reason is they believed that their religion was so similar to Judaism that, of course, once Jewish people found out about it, that they would convert to Christianity. And so I think that's part of the reason why they started doing that, to for that confusion.
Well, that's the nicer version of that side, because there's also the whole thing of, they do believe that Israel must exist in order for Jesus to get, and not all Christians, of course, believe this, but, there are Christians that do believe that Israel has to exist in order for the end of the world and the second coming.
That's
and
that's the part I remember.
Yes, it's very much about bringing about the apocalypse, and being an evangelical, it's a commitment to God to support Israel.
And they don't necessarily think that the Jewish people there are going to convert either. They just need them to be there in order to.
Right. No, I think they're
have the end of the world.
Yeah, they think they're going to all die, is what it is.
Yeah, they believe all the Jews are going to die. Interesting enough, since we just brought up Israel, once again their government is collapsing. What is this? 5 times in the last 4 years, and I think something that isn't talked about much is the reason their government isn't working is still rooted in the racist states foundation. They all are pretty committed to maintaining and holding on to Palestinian land and maintaining the apartheid. So the problem is they couldn't come to a reasonable vote, because otherwise, the Israelis living in the West Bank now would be subjected to the same laws that they have made for Palestinians. So in order to protect the Israeli citizens, it was easier for them to dissolve the government. But one thing that everyone in Bennett's party is in agreement on, is left and right, is that Netanyahu could no longer manage the occupation because of all of his corruption scandals, plus last year's Palestinian revolt. But I feel I
really hope this election does not mean the return of Bibi. I really, really, really hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
Or even the Likud party retaking control would be catastrophic for so many people in Palestine.
Yeah. We'll maybe have to do an episode main story on what's been going on in Israel with their government, because I think that's, it's usually skipped over because we do focus on what is happening to the Palestinian, which absolutely that apartheid needs to be focused on. It is it's genocide. And but how are they using their government to do it, I think, is really interesting, especially when some are opposed to it. They still want to maintain that structure, though. Even they're centrists or leftist, quote unquote. They're not leftists at all. They're all intensified repression on the Palestinians. But yeah.
It's tragic stuff.
It is horrible. So, Cory, you want to go ahead and start us off with our...
Oh, yeah, and we can get a lot more depressing.
Yes. Everyone take a deep breath, all right?
No, well, this is something that I do want to actually put forward, is I do want to give kind of a content warning on a lot of this, that this is going to be some hard information that's coming up, because, it's been mentioned that we've been living in a cultural civil war, or, a cold civil war kind of thing. And we're moving out of that into an actual asymmetrical war right now. And that's something that we really do have to realize, is that because of the SCOTUS decision, people are going to die, and they're probably already dying.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to have casualties on this, and we're going to see. I was talking to my best friend yesterday, and he mentioned that he wonders what our appetite for, what we'll be able to stomach in what we're going to be seeing in this. And he wasn't too hopeful because, we do in the gun rights debate and that sort of thing, we've seen children be killed in mass shootings too, and that didn't stop us. So what would...
and I believe it was the FBI recently who has been putting out that now we will definitely be seeing increasing violence.
Yes.
And I know I had an unpopular opinion when we're talking about gun reform. Like, as a military person, I believe it should be just as difficult for people to get their hands on a weapon as it was for me in the military, which means FBI background check, a basic psych eval, full safety training, and we got to prove we have it committed to memory that we just follow those protocols. And then when we had a weapon, it was we didn't carry them with us all the time. It was just like when we had a duty to use them. But the unpopular opinion is incoming. And for me, right now, with the state of America, I don't want to ban any kind of weapon. I don't want to. I think they already, the right already thinks they have all the guns. And they don't, by the way, but I don't know. For me, I'm not sure. I don't think now is the moment. I want to do that in the future, but I don't know.
So you're planning for the Civil War that's coming.
I don't want a Civil War.
You want to have your gun so we can fight the Civil War.
I don't want to fight. I want to protect myself.
Yeah.
I want people to be able to protect themselves. These people have been amassing weapons for years. Like the large amount of weapons they have, it's just... and they're itching for a fight. We see the videos of them doing their little stamping around. Like, that's not how you march, you morons. But marching is supposed to be quiet. All right.
Well, Texas, the Texas GOP recently put secession into their platform.
I'm from Texas.
Which is really interesting, actually. That's one of the things I'm going to be covering is what their plans for how secession could work and how they could retain the monopoly of force in that.
Interesting.
And where the religious right would like to see that go. So we'll be covering that.
All right. Well, then I'll quit with my unpopular opinion.
Well, yeah. So, it's we're going to start with kind of what is Christian Dominionism, and then we're going to get into three ideas involved in it that are actually going to be sadly important to know coming forward. So kind of one of the things that I'm looking at this with is, realizing that you're waking up, if you're in the United States now, you are waking up every morning in a country that is at war with itself. And so we should know something about the people that are fighting against us right now and against really everyone that isn't them in this. And so dominionism overall is the general idea that the Christian, whatever your denomination of Christian be, if you're a dominionist, that they are the ones that should control all aspects of society and government and this sort of thing. And one of the really foundational people in this was R.J. Rushdoony. And so he was a religious thinker in the 1950s. He died in 2001.
R.J. What was his name? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Rushdoony. Oh. Yeah, R.J. Rushdoony.
And there's a professor at Florida State, Dr. McVicker, which, yes, he's a professor of religion and his name is McVicker, which is quite actually interesting. But he's written a book about Rushdoony and how fundamental he was to the Christian Dominionism. And in 2007, in a piece for Political Research Associates, he gets into kind of where Rushdoony starts with this and why it's so different than a lot of other Christian kind of thinking. And it's very old Middle Ages, early Middle Ages. We're talking very pre-Aquinas type of thinking here. And the reason
can you go ahead and define pre-Aquinas?
So this is anti-rationalism thinking. So what it comes down to
and
is
the anti-intellectual, the anti-science.
It's further than that. And so what it is we get into this. According to McVicker, As a theologian, Rushduni saw human beings as primary religious creatures bound to God, not as autonomous rational thinkers. Mm-hmm. And so what this means is there's in Rushduni's eyes, there's two kinds of thought. There is either thought that is biblical, inspired by God, and of that, or there is any other type of thought. And any other type of thought is sin and must be eliminated. And so this was, he's got this very God-centric, early Middle Ages type of thinking to it. And he very clearly blamed Eve.
They love to blame Eve.
Of course they did.
And Eve came second.
Well, in his thinking too, the sin, actually, the original sin wasn't learning the nature of good and evil, but it was the desire to think independently of God on Eve's part. And so that is why he has this really horrific view of Eve and places that entirely upon her, whereas he sees Adam as almost a victim of Eve's machinations and things.
Yes, I've heard this very sad story. Poor Adam. Poor Adam.
Geez. But one of the things that I'm going to be mentioning is that I'm not a theologian. So I'm not necessarily going to be getting into whether or not any of these ideologies necessarily fit with any type of Christianity, that sort of thing. There will be mention from some of the sources I'm using of how it fits with theirs, but definitely listen to and it would be good at some point probably to look into, getting a theologian on here to discuss these
We have an evangelical pastor coming on to talk about these things in a little more detail in a couple of weeks.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So, way ahead of you.
That show. Yeah.
I'm hoping to get a rabbi on as well.
Oh, that would be great. Yes. The differences between, absolutely. So the first thing that we're going to get into here is the quiverful movement, which it's a thing that's going to become quite important, especially now with the Roe v. Wade decision, because the quiverful movement is about having lots and lots of children and raising them to be warriors in a religious war. And so what it is the arrows in this quiver are the children. This is the weaponization of raising children.
Yeah.
And so this comes out of the late...
Expendable children.
What's that? Yeah.
And like, I remember the first time I learned about this was there was this documentary in the 90s called Jesus Camp. And I just remember watching these kids. It was one of the reasons why I left religion in general, or I had a big influence on it because it scared the crap out of me. And these kids were all being raised that way. And so I really recommend it if you want to see what that looks like, because those kids are all grown up now and they are definitely... I've been waiting for a follow-up. I want to find out specifically where these kids are. But yeah, Jesus Camp, I recommend it.
So this also goes back to, one of the other ways that people might know about this too is the TLC show about the Duggar family. Yeah. Were quiverful people. And, so you can see how all the problems with that and the horrific things that happened there too. But that was a very, kind view on that show to them, and didn't get into the thinking behind it. And so what it is in quiverful movement, the idea, and it started with Rick and Jen Hess wrote a book in 1989 called A Full Quiver, Family Padding, and the Lordship of Christ. And this is where they put forward these type of ideas.
What was the title of that again?
So it's A Full Quiver, Family Planning, and the Lordship of Christ. And they're the ones that coined the term with the quiverful thing in that. And the key point of it that the Hesses were making is that for women, especially, the body was meant to be a living sacrifice to God in this. And so is... Yeah.
Isn't that exciting news, Jill? That's what you are.
That's what I live for.
Sad thing is, women do live this life. And, this is why some people thought it was, wild when, I'll say raising children in religion is child abuse, but there has been such bad results because that is child abuse. Telling your kid if they don't do everything you say that will burn in hell for eternity. Like, children have literal trauma and have to get help once they get out of this, or otherwise they lead really horrifying lives.
Yeah.
And so there was also a study that was done looking into this by Laura Harrison and Sarah Rowley at one of our favorite universities, University of Indiana, the history department there. So you had Aaron on your show a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Who was there. And so they looked into this in 2011 with the kind of the view of how the Duggar family was being seen. And the point they make is that the quiverful movement looks at children as arrows to be shot at the enemies of fundamental religion here.
And I do want to mention that the Duggar dad is also a pedophile and has groomed daughters and such. I think it's important to always mention there's a lot of pedophilia on this side of Christianity.
Yes. And one of the interesting things, though, that is a little different about the quiverful movement and how it kind of came about after 9/11 was that it's one of the first times that we see an imagined community created instead of coming directly from necessarily one pastor at a church starting this movement. This grew online. And so this is a little different than what you would see in more traditional things here. And so there were forums, there were chats, this type of thing with it. And that led to, in-person face-to-face interactions and groups and that sort of thing too. But that this really does come from not a rejection of the technology, but a use and appropriation of the technology in order to grow a movement into this. And so that's an important thing that we're going to be looking at, and kind of this is how a lot of these things have been changed with the advance of modern technology and that sort of thing too. But the point of this and the reason to have this many children is because in the 1980s especially, and the Hesses talked about this directly, they were facing a demographic challenge. And one of the things they noted was during the Reagan administration, at the point when they really did see that there was kind of a conservative high watermark, they were having trouble finding staffers in DC for these Republicans who believed these Christian fundamentalist points. And that's what got them started here, was this idea of needing an army of young people that would continue it. And that is increased a lot more after 9/11, especially with how millennials, first off, became a much less religious generation. And now Gen Z is also becoming a much less religious generation. So they're looking at this as something that they need to outproduce on, because they see these children as a product, and they see them as weapons.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from 2000 to 2006, the church had nearly decreased by 50% population, but then also increased in fundamentalism around the same time period. Or it might.
I don't have the numbers in front of me.
That might be specifically the Baptist church, but I know that there was a huge decline by 2006. I know in the Christian church in general, but there was a number that was about 50%. Maybe I'll find that.
And one of the things that increased, especially during that period, was the militarism and the militant kind of rhetoric that was occurring in the quiverful movement, where they were seeing, and it's highly patriarchal too. So the point of this being is that the family becomes, in this case, a arms production or a military unit, is how they see this. And so there's the CO, the father of the family, and this is the person who is dictatorially controlling the rest of it. And then the wife is intended to be kind of carrying out the orders, and the children are then both products and kind of the grunt, they do
the dirty work
going there. Yeah, and part of this too, and this does go back to Rushduni. Rushduni was the first person that really started pushing the homeschooling of children and rejecting, especially public education. And the Quiverful movement has fully embraced this. They wish to isolate the children as much as possible from external influence of
right,
this,
so they can indoctrinate them.
Yeah.
We had a mutual friend who was actually raised in a cult like that, and they don't even study normal subjects. She once showed me some of the workbooks that they would study. You remember her, and it was so bizarre. I mean, it wasn't even, like I was raised Christian, and it was like foreign to me, like that form of Christianity. It was very bizarre.
And so one of the things that Harrison and Rowley point out is that there's this delusion of individual choice in it too. And so they say that there's the Quiverful movement wholeheartedly endorses submission to God by all members of the family and submission to the patriarchal father by women and children. Individualistic motives are often posited as threatening to the established hegemony within it, be that first at the home, but then also in the community, and then eventually the nation is what they're looking for with this. So they say that this is the woman's choice to go into this and be this sacrifice for God and this sort of thing. But really there's a false element of choice there. They're appropriating the entire idea of choice instead of encouraging it, because within the family and the daughters within the Quiverful families are, there is no choice present to them at any point. It is just expected that they then continue on and continue on and continue on. And every Quiverful
sad existence, like that's it makes me sad for for people to think that life is supposed to be basically torture or hard work, and then you get rewarded after you die only to find out that they have probably been tools their whole life.
And it's the point of this is building that then to kind of compete everyone else in society, and to create as many of these fundamentalist, very extremist Christian nationalists within these groups that have not really had any external influence in order to allow them to, rebel or be corrupted and this sort of thing. And this goes back to the Rushduni thinking with any thought that is rational, is independent of God and therefore is sin. And that includes, by the way, not just secular thinking, but of course every other religion too, because this is primacy on that. And so a big thing that we can now come to our second thought from this, once we see how they're kind of trying to build this army, which is the 7 mountains. And so it can either be called the 7 mountains Dominionism, 7 mountains movement, 7 mountains theory, depending on who you're looking at with this. So we're just going to call it 7 mountains overall. And what that is it's a form of religious thinking that is intending to bring about a complete control of global society by fundamentalist Christian groups. And in order to do that, they need all of these people. So they have these Quiverful movements and this sort of thing. And one of the things that the Quiverful movement has been really interested in the last few weeks is how many orphans there are going to be soon.
So this whole thing with the overturning Roe kind of like plays right into it, because they need more. They need more babies.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Which is why if you saw Amy Coney Barrett's her decision, she included basically she basically referred to them as crops or cattle. Was it human supply? Yes, the human supply. That's what they were.
Human supply of babies,
basically. Well, there's also, they're also the worried about being replaced as the majority. Yeah. That there's also that from not specifically from this movement, but in general, especially especially the racist people. Like that's why they're like, you will not replace us. That's what that's from.
Yeah, that Illinois representative won the primary. downstate, Mary Miller, I believe is her name, and she at a rally that I think Trump was at. I might be mistaken, but anyway, she said, kind of like, thank God for Roe because it's a victory for white life.
Yes, I shared that clip.
Oh my God.
Yes, for white life specifically. Because
so one of the tenets
real quick, we just already have, it is important to note that BIPOC, especially Black women, are more likely to die giving birth or through pregnancy due to medical bigotry. Yeah. So it does put Black women in way more danger than white women, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that quiverful mothers are told is when it comes to things like actually providing for these children and that sort of thing, that God will provide because you are doing the Lord's work. And so the point of this being, too, is it's not necessarily even how many children you can have now, because a lot of this, what they're looking for is they think that there's going to be a complete overloading of the foster care system. And that with that, a lot of the barriers to either becoming foster parents or adopting children and the cost of that is going to evaporate once there's this large number of kids that just don't have anywhere else to go right now. And they believe that they're then going to be able to get as many of these as possible into these families and start indoctrinating them and start moving them forward and start building this army even faster.
Yeah. And, the SCOTUS did just overturn prayer in school on this really crazy story, which we can talk about later because it didn't even make any sense. But yeah, prayer's back in school.
And so this comes and works into the seven mountains theory, which is there are seven mountains of any society that must be conquered and taken in order for there to be a dominion, the Christian dominion within it. And the theological basis here, and what it goes back to, is the idea that, and this is not, of course, accepted by all Christians in any way, shape, or form, but that that particular version of Christianity must conquer the entire world before Jesus returns too. And
when you say conquer, what does that entail for them?
It's nonviolent up to the point when violence would be useful. I mean, that's really the reality of it. And so one of the groups that's actually really quite worried about this are the Seventh-day Adventists, because they see this as heretical to their interpretation of Christianity. And there was a very good piece that was put out by Trevor Oreggio of Andrews University, who's in the theological seminary in the Seventh-day Adventists. And he, in 2011, really broke down what all of this entails and how it comes to. And the reason he thinks this is so very dangerous is because they do believe that they have a divine mandate to take the entire world.
Is this group aligned or for Christians United for Israel, or is that within the same group? Because I know Christians United for Israel is 8 million deep. They have 8 million members worldwide.
I'm not seeing Christians United for Israel directly in Dr. Reggio's
it's also called CUFI.
Listing.
But the other thing I was curious about is that book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which it has been very big for the anti-Semitism. And I know Hitler read it and adopted it. And I'm wondering if that also gets utilized as must read. It's one of the oldest.
It's not mentioned in here, but it is that there's kind of this. You have a web of ideas. They're kind of that you would have here, and so you would probably there's nothing necessarily that's let's make the point that there is absolutely nothing that is pro-Jewish in this, and there is a lot of hatred for every other religion. And so things that could work into that would probably be of interest to them. But what they see is they see this as an outgrowth of the eventual kind of end point of Protestantism is where this all comes from originally. And so they go back and they trace their own religion in the chronology of the movement to 1517 in the beginning of the Protestant Reformation and that sort of thing. And so it goes through, there's large Pentecostal influences and that sort of thing too, although not all Pentecostals, of course, believe in this either. And it is rapidly growing. And this is a very large growth group within the evangelical community right now. And they're very, very clear on where their goals are going with this, which is that they want to have 1 billion of their, they believe once they take 1 billion people into their their way of thinking, at that point, they will have the ability to dominate the entire planet.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
I was just thinking, like, Q, of course, is a really good way to at least put people on track for these things, since it's also leaning into some of this rhetoric, and especially on how well it helps demonize the opposition. It seems like Q can be a really good gateway to bring people into this.
I have a question. So you said there was something like 7 mountains or something like that.
Yes.
Are these
yes, we're going to get to what they are. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, are they like, okay, first we take this hill, then we take that hill? Like, is it like step-by-step instructions on how to like take over the planet?
So there's actually one of the things that they hotly debate right now, actually, is how to do that, because they do have kind of differing views on how to go about this. So let's go with what the 7 mountains are here too, which is, so the first mountain is religion itself. And so they have to dominate all religious thinking on, within an area. And the other thing too is you can start this within one country. And that is one thing that they do agree on, is that the United States is the best place to start this, because of the inherent power that the United States has as, superpower, hyperpower, whatever you'd like to put it at. Its ability
not to mention
force.
How anti-intellectual we are, and how rabid the propaganda that's been working since the Cold War against ideologies that oppose it, make it easier to bring those people together, which is why we see like such a united right now. They didn't all come from the same place, but now they're like sharing ideologies, and they are united in this kind of conquer way. Just not all of them had an ideology at first. They just were groomed into religion to just follow it. And so they do.
And that actually comes into the second mountain then, which is education. And they need to completely control the way that education is done so that it only furthers their specific goals. And then from that, there's the third mountain, which is family. And that's where things like the Quiverful movement really fit very well with it, because of these ideas of full sacrificing and then militancy. And there's, of course, then there's government, which is the one that they've actually been, had a lot of success in. Lately, which is, as we've seen. And the ones that they're personally very unsure of, but see as the most important 3 are business, media, and then entertainment, and arts and entertainment. And they believe that business specifically is an incredibly important one, because while they don't necessarily think that they need to control the means of production, what they need to control is the wealth distribution entirely. And so there was Taxley and Sarich wrote a paper, which is Marxist parallels with 7 Mountains Dominionism. And they are 7 Mountains Dominionists. And they wrote a study where they looked at how Marxist ideology and into how to do wealth redistribution can be appropriated by them in order to then take control of large centers of wealth. And that's been the one that they've had the biggest problems with too, is this is their
it's surprising that capitalism has actually been
I was just
one of the
thinking
biggest
that.
problems.
I
for
was
it.
just
Yeah.
thinking that. I was like, well, they have to try to get through capitalism, and it's got its hooks into everything. So it's going to be hard to crack that nut.
What would that
It
economic structure look like, anyways?
So what it would look like is it would involve the changing of all wealth structures into a centralized church itself. And so the church that they want to build, which is basically, a group of kind of what we would think of as evangelical charismatic pastors, would then become the wealthiest individuals and have the most control, and then be able to control through having all of the resources given to them by their parishioners, by their flock. They would be able to then decide what to do with all of the wealth of whatever they take over.
Do you know which mainstream evangelical priests might already be in this movement, like Joel Osteen or?
Joel Osteen, I hasn't necessarily done. There are some. I don't have a list in front of me right now, but there are ones that have been very heavily associated with this. And particularly there are ones who kind of work into some of the QAnon stuff into their churches too, and start this almost worship of political figures and this sort of thing, and writing them into their prophecies and things of that nature. That is part of their attempt to influence and take over government, because they do need people who are in government that they can either control or are people who believe in this ideology as well.
So does this include Doug Coe and family?
Cohen family. I don't.
Well, Doug Coe, he's dead now, but his two sons, David and whatever, in the family, you could see this docuseries on Netflix, but they're very much with their hands straight in government. I mean, and they're willing to work with literally any man. No women. Women don't have their place up there in the top. Women are there to provide, be support, and make babies, obviously. But like, even so, like they even, he works with various senators and Republican on both sides of the aisle, actually, senators and Congress people. And then they'll go and they'll be like, oh, we'll just do our Jesus thing and we'll pray with this person. And then that's good enough. Like, so they went to Gaddafi and they were able to make a deal with Gaddafi. And they're like, oh, well, I'm not representing the government right now. I'm representing Jesus. Like, no, man. You are always representing the government. And if you go to another country and you start talking to them and making deals, they believe it's from the United States.
Were these the people that also got Mike Lindell, Mr. My Pillow, as well? Because I know that there was some investigation that was done by the Young Turks, actually, as to how he was taken to the prayer breakfast. And
it's the prayer breakfast group. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Prayer breakfast. Yes. And now they've spread and there's factions everywhere. And of course, this is another way I actually wanted to talk about, like in the male supremacy movement series, The Enemy is Woman, that I've been doing. They also kind of fit into that because now they have these splinter groups. And like, the thing is, like, they're very multicultural because to them, like, oh, none of that matters as long as you're men. And as long as you say Jesus or you pray to Jesus together, now we can make anything work. And that's how a lot of the deals across the aisle have been achieved because Doug Coe did that. And one of the things that really stood out to me was they only use 5 books of the Bible. They don't read any of the others. And, which I think are Matthew, John, Luke, and Paul. And then plus they did, Psalms or Proverbs, but they call it something else. And yeah, I mean, they really have been, spreading tentacles all around the world. And like,
yes,
even working.
And that is one thing that I was actually going to get into is how, where there are centers, not just in the United States now, but also in Canada and Germany and Australia that are looking into this. That's as of 2011. That's what Reggio is saying. And so there's probably even more now. I had trouble finding where the current centers were. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of like crossover right now, because I've always
since I was a kid, paid attention to what's going on with religion because it was always just so bizarre to me. And especially like seeing how much of hypocrites they were, even like 13 years old, I could recognize this. And cults, just like I watch so many cult documentaries because I just like, I'm not like a groupthink kind of person. And so it's fascinating in a really terrible way. And I just been watching how these various groups, along with, the male supremacy movement and the white supremacy movement, are all finding ways to coexist towards common goals. And then we have Q coming in, which are conflating some of these ideas. And I'm just curious, like, if they're bringing people in without even, making them aware specifically of what ideology they're representing at this point. To me, it looks a little messy.
Definitely something that's going. I mean, there's things where there are pastors who believe in seven mountains dominionism, and they mention it in the church and that sort of thing, but they don't. Not all the parishioners necessarily will know that that's the kind of information they're hearing and that sort of thing. But we get into kind of some of the interesting things of what they believe this army is going to be too, that they are going to get from these people, like the Quiverful movement, which is, so they see that they believe that anyone who is within the service to them is part of an army that is and is a quote from Bill Hamilton's prophetic scripture yet to be fulfilled, which describes the people who are working in this as the new breed of men, and says that they could potentially or will at some point have the same powers, godlike powers that Jesus himself did too. And so they believe that they're going to have these very powerful groups. And what the point of this is then is to take out everything that is not considered a biblical thing. And because there are the demons of rational thought, there are the demons of every other religion, there are the demons of any type of thinking that is not involved here. And as Oregio says, these demons are described as obstacles envisioned to the kingdom on earth. They are the source of corruption, illness, poverty, and purging these demons will result in mass evangelization and the eradication of all social ills. So they believe that the further they get in this, it's just going to have this snowball effect.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be very violent.
How far along are they? I mean, in their quest, to take over the world?
I mean, it depends on who you ask within it. That's a big part of it. Is they've had some. There are some issues they really do still have trouble trying to kind of crack the nut of, as you put it, which is within the business world, especially within media. They're very obsessed with getting control of media because they understand the power that mass media can have.
Well, especially here in America, like American exceptionalism really exists in our media and marketing and propaganda machine. That is where we excel.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's why they have gravitated towards like you were saying, like I don't know, the social media world or the online chats and all of that.
There's that. There's also a lot of parallel media that the Christian world, that the evangelical Christians have to kind of Hollywood media type mass market type things too. There's the entire world of Christian movies, Christian rock, Christian television,
all terrible.
All these things.
They're just so bad. When mentioning art and entertainment, I'm like, but they're doing terrible in that realm too. Like, there's just too much good art. But I was gonna say, like, it's trying to talk to people about these things, especially before Trump, and trying to talk to people about this is an actual movement. These people are doing, this is a conspiracy. They are working together to do these things, and getting people to listen. You're like, you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist. And you're like, well, it's not really a theory because they're admitting it. If you just listen to what they're saying, it's not, it is a conspiracy, and it is on purpose.
Yeah. This is an actual attempt at world domination. This is there are people out there who are really actually trying to take over the world right now.
Wow.
And and one of the things that Reggio is very concerned about, and he says that one of the He says, one of the most unsettling things about the movement is the militancy and the stridency of it. Much of their language used to describe taking back and having dominion is absolutely devoid of the passionate love of Jesus. And this is the view of the Seventh-day Adventist theologian here. He's very concerned that there is absolutely no compassion or love in this. Mm-hmm. This is a thing of, and he goes into this very deeply, of violent overtaking and domination over this, and that this is something that's alluring to people. And he gets into where within the Seventh-day Adventists this could fit into their beliefs regarding the future and when the end times would come and that sort of thing. And this is heretical to the Adventists, and it's violently terrifying to them.
Yeah.
And it's heretical to a lot of different Christian denominations too.
One problem that I would see, though, maybe if you, I'm assuming that a lot of this is like rooted in American, the United States culture, right?
Yes.
How would it translate? If they want to take over the world is like, it's.
Well, they're not getting the North Sentinelese, I'll tell you that.
But I'm just, if you're trying to go to, Latin America or Africa or, Asia or something. Those cultures are just, vastly different. And a lot of the things probably, I'm assuming, would not work or would not translate.
I imagine violence like they did at the original colonization period and how they were able to spread Catholicism.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too. Yeah.
This is genocide.
Is the
answer.
Oh, genocide is the answer.
Global genocide is the answer that they would have here.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Submit or die type of conquering that would result in the complete destruction of all culture that is not their own.
Oh, my God.
So when
Yeah, and that's something I was thinking about with some of these rulings that SCOTUS has made that, like, for example, the 100-mile border where you can't really sue the Border Patrol anymore if they are doing illegal search and seizures or brutality or any of that. And now you also can't appeal to get out of jail if you had a bad lawyer. So what does that mean? Well, obviously they want to put more people in jail, and then you belong to the state and they can make you do forced labor on plantations. And who are they going to? Well, obviously BIPOC people have been on the brunt end of it, but now they're moving towards wanting to make LGBTQIA plus people criminals just for being that way. And I don't think it's a much further step for political dissidents to also end up, being put in jails. Like they already practice their own, catch and, during the George Floyd riot or Black Lives Matter movement and various rallies that we already saw them with those vans. So they just snatch people off the street and like see if they could do it that way. So they've already been, I don't know specifically how many of them are aware of which part of it they are a part of, because they are rabidly for their Wolf King, which is, what the family and Doug Cohen family called Trump. And they truly believe that God does not care about the regular person, the meek. They claim that God only cares about the elites, and that they are in these positions because they are chosen by God. And so therefore they can't do anything wrong. You can't judge them because God uses, quote, imperfect vessels. And
a divine right of kings type thing.
Yeah. And so.
And Calvinist predestination and living predestination with that.
Right. And that's why they love Trump, because, he does basically follow what they're looking for. And he can't do any wrong, and he's charismatic, and he captured people with the help of Russian propaganda.
Well, this brings us then actually very nicely, and thank you for setting me up with the third idea.
And real quick,
here.
If you're just tuning in, by the way, you are listening to In Other News. I'm your host, Rachel Bloomstrom. Today we're joined by co-host Jill M. Stone and Cory Taylor, who is presenting our main story on Christian Dominionism. Thank you. All right, Cory.
Hello. So the third idea, and this is the newest of the ideas, and we thankfully have, thankfully in quotes, there is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's so good at saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
When it comes to things like this, and the idea of the national divorce. And what this is the idea that's actually bringing it all together and starting their dominion power here. And so this is, you were asking how far along they are in this. Well, this is the roadmap that they wish to use to get it right here. And so she started talking about this last fall and winter. And before she got on Twitter, before she got quite banned forever. But she took a poll asking how many people would support a national divorce between the red states and the blue states.
Oh, wow.
And one of the things she also mentioned here is that anyone who comes from a blue state to a red state should have a cooling off period before they are allowed to vote in their new state.
Okay.
A cooling off
So,
period.
What about all the people who are going to escape red states so they can keep some rights to blue states? What about them? Are they allowed to go?
That's actually where a lot of this goes. And this is where timing becomes an issue. Because we could now see, especially with the current Supreme Court decisions, large internal migration in the United States.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
There's going to be a lot of people who are trying to leave red states to get to blue states, and including businesses too. I mean, that is actually one of the things that should be mentioned, is that there are going to be a lot of businesses that take a look at other places right now, and vote with their own feet too. And one of the things to think about is that internal migration from all of the people who want to have these rights leaving these very red states to blue states. In the Electoral College, that won't matter until after 2030.
Until after 2030?
The 2030 census. Because the Electoral College has just been redrawn.
Right.
And so you have Illinois and California losing seats in the Electoral College.
Well, that was a lot to do, too, I think, with Trump's sort of undercount,
Well, and there's also, since the last election, there's been a massive movement to start taking away voter rights, because the right knows that they've only won one election by popular vote since 1986, I think. And it's really horrifying what is happening. I mean, this is why I'm saying, Democrats are just going to have to play hard. Period. It's what's going to have to happen.
So here's what they're pushing for then, which is they wish to gain more and more political power. And then the idea being is that this national divorce can occur. And they want this asked for by the blue states. They want blue states to try to secede from the United States, especially California, and form their own country, because they believe that when a state secedes from the Union, it is then in rebellion and can be put down by the military.
That's how the military, because I've known that they've been, they've been trying to find a way to cause a war between both, which I think is, stripping human rights is their way of saying, I dare you now. All right.
Yes.
You're going to fight for this? Are you going to fight for this? They're trying to push it.
Their point is they want states to they want people to try to leave first the red states so that they can consolidate more political power. And then they want the blue states to try to leave the country.
So then it's better if what we did during the Civil War, where we don't allow the succession and we have to put it down.
But they're not the ones that would be doing the succession.
Right. But I don't think we will.
I don't think that
right. That's one of the big things here.
That won't happen. Yeah.
This is also playing into the stuff I was on last talking about, which is the Russian influence campaigns and this type of thing. Destabilization in the United States is going to be pushed by foreign powers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are going to be bringing up and trying to egg on these types of things too, to destroy United States standing in the world stage. And
I just had a thought. I mean, but so if the game plan is to try to get the blue states to secede,
Mhm.
I mean, isn't what Texas did, putting, the Texas GOP putting secession in their platform, kind of like, I mean,
Yeah,
that
is danger. That is counter to their plan.
That
Yes.
is counter to their plan. Okay,
But
I just want to
being
make sure.
from Texas, like from a very young age, I think 5th grade Texas history classes when we were already talking about, well, we're the only state that can secede and we're the only state that can fly our flag as high as the American flag. We fly them next to it, not below it, because when we joined, it was more like an agreement, and inside of the
true. They were their own country for a
14 years.
For a hot minute.
14 years.
Yeah.
And, but in the contract they made with the United States included the ability to secede. Is what the deal is. So that's why they make sure every Texan knows that. And it's like really instilled in people that.
So let me get this straight. If Texas secedes, we can let them go?
According to them.
According to Texas.
According to Texas.
Not
Right.
according.
And according to the deal that was made.
Okay.
They technically could, but we're not going to let them because that is like a quarter of the economy.
Not according to the Reconstruction Amendments either, not the Constitution. Because Texas made their deal before the Civil War.
Oh, right.
And they were the Reconstruction Amendments.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
So Texas can say they have this deal all they want.
Okay.
It's not constitutional.
Oh, but wait, the Supreme Court, they always go back to the oldest, most
that's not even true. They just
historical-
cherry pick. Because if they
true.
did go back to the oldest, there were times abortion was
that's
legal.
right. That's right.
And
they cherry pick. You're right.
and they just made up this precedent in Oklahoma. Like that came out of nowhere. There was zero precedent to approve that.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. Okay, cool.
Right. And so what they want to do, and so this is kind of how they see this snowballing up, is they don't believe right now that they are powerful enough to be violent towards everyone else in a way that would not get their movement crushed. So they need to gain the monopoly of force. And that's their goal. And they wish to do this through indoctrinating all of these children, taking all of these institutions and centers of power, and then setting up a way in which they can go after everyone else in the world in a large genocidal war of conquering.
They have been playing the long game.
Yes.
And they have been playing it well.
Saying that. Yeah. They've been saying that for generations. This has always been, when Rushduni was talking about this, he was talking about it in future generations and laying the groundwork for this dominion on earth in future generations, in future generations, in future generations. And we now see, what's that?
I was just going to say, are the FBI onto these folks? Or, I mean, is there anybody out there fighting?
This is religious freedom. This is religious freedom. This is protected speech.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, this is where, I believe in free speech, but I also believe in consequences of those speech. And if it results in actual violence being committed, then there should be consequences and you should be held responsible, particularly if we can, I don't know how we're getting away with not calling these people cults right now, because we've definitely overstepped in instances of other cults. And the rhetoric is very similar to many cults. Like I said, I watched a lot of, I've read and watched a lot of stuff about them. And it's crazy because they're saying it's Christianity. And some Christians are like, that's not Christianity. Just like, people were saying the family, Doug Coe's family, is not the same Christianity because it's only using 5 books from the Bible. What do you
what do you call them? Well, they're all saying they're Christians and none of them are correcting each other. So that's how they're getting away with continuing this. If they were to like rename their church, I feel like that would be the only way we could prosecute them. But then again, a lot of the Billy Graham church offshoots, like the one of a mutual person we know was a part of, was dissolved because of it being recognized as a cult. So
This is large too. I mean, this is another thing about this. This is large, and it does already have a lot of power within the government. And part of this is also that they want to find legal ways to use force and to kill and that sort of thing. And that's part of what this Roe versus Wade being overturned was. They are killing people right now with this, and they are doing it in a legal way according to the Supreme Court. And so, yeah, I mean, what they're going to do is when they take the monopoly of force, they are going to do it in a way that they are able to justify and in a way that they are going to be able to try to utilize.
Right.
They will feel that they have legitimate power each time that they undertake an action. They are not acting, they know the laws. Right. And they are very aware of them.
I just got to ask, Amy Coney Barrett, is she part of this?
She's in a Christian faction, at least, that she's not allowed to make decisions.
She Catholic, is right?
She's what?
Is Amy Coney Barrett Catholic?
No,
she's in something.
She's in a specific faction where all of the rules, like all women defer to the men.
Right.
So
it's
she
very
can't
patriarchal.
Yeah. She can't make a decision without her husband's approval. So she's standing in the Supreme Court making his decisions.
I mean, it might be like a Catholic offshoot or something. I'm not sure.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I thought it was.
But I just remember hearing some things about her, and it seems like it kind of, I don't know.
I don't understand how
fits with her. I don't know.
I don't understand how we farted her through in 8 weeks left in the presidency. Like, this is one of the things I hate the most about Democrats, that they let them do this. And they went ahead and approved her too.
No, I mean, this is, as I do have to make the joke as a Marquette graduate, that we all knew that Notre Dame was going to have some hand in bringing about the end of the United States.
It's called, her church is called the People of Praise.
People of Praise.
People of Praise. I'm going to have to look into that one. Yeah, this is what's at stake right now. This is where this is going to go, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, I'll definitely do a follow-up of this where we start listing churches and individuals that we might be able to identify, but obviously they're in this very messy thing covering it up.
Right, we'd have to go through and check our sources. And but it's going to get worse because they need it to get worse in order to start bringing about the things they want to see. So they are definitely going to be coming for LGBTQ rights. They are definitely going to be coming for birth control. They are definitely going to be coming for absolutely everything they can to make life as horrific as possible in this country for everyone except for them.
Yep.
And they're also quite willing to take a lot of pain too. I mean, that's where these are. These people see themselves as sacrificing themselves for a godly cause too. And so they're willing to take a lot of economic hardship. They're willing to take a lot of social ridicule too, and just eat it because this is part of the war they see themselves in.
And this is how they get to also call themselves victims. Look what society's doing, even though they know they're creating the issue. It's gross and it's horrifying. And it just drives me crazy that people, if you're listening, please, this is not a joke. This is very much happening. And if you can't see it now, I don't know what it's going to take until it's too late.
Well, okay. So that begs the question. How do we counteract it?
What do we do about it?
Yes, here we go. Thank you. We need this.
Yeah.
I was about to say, let's get some good news. Should I take a break real quick? But no, let's hear it.
If you want to, yeah. I mean, we have a half hour left. So if you
Yeah,
want to
no.
put in some good news in the night,
Well, let's just take a moment to like feel good about one thing. And Ketanji Brown was sworn in yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
great news. Black Lives Matter. That woman is amazing. And her credentials just make the rest of them look like fools. Amy Coney Barrett didn't even go to a public school. So she technically doesn't have a high school diploma. She was homeschooled. Oh, she went to a private school. I'm sorry. She went to a private school, but it was a private Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to think about her for one more second. All right, Ketanji Brown.
Yes.
You got great things to say about her, y'all? Anything?
Oh, I mean, she's amazing. I mean, she handled that mess that you called a well, it was more of an inquisition when they were like, questioning her. But she handled it with grace, and I think she's going to write some fabulous dissents. Unfortunately, it's going to be dissents for the foreseeable future, I think,
And what's interesting is Gorsuch seems to be a little bit of a loose end for them when it comes to certain things. Like, he has already dissented with them.
Yeah, he's not a swing vote.
He's not a swing vote.
It's really about the Native Americans for him.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
I mean, that's pretty. I mean,
is that the only?
He's on the right side of that one issue. So
is that the only issue he's on the right side of? I'm trying to be hopeful right now.
Kind of, I think.
Roberts is a lot more moderate than I ever thought he was going to be. I'm going to make that point.
Yeah.
He is a much older school Republican, I guess.
Yeah.
I thought that he was going to, when he came in, I thought he was going to be another Thomas. And that's kind of what we were, all fearing. And thankfully that didn't happen.
By the way, there's a petition going on to impeach Clarence Thomas, and it's in the hundreds of thousands right now on moveon.org. And I think, petitions very rarely do anything, but I feel like if we get enough signatures, they're going to go after it. And I also heard that Ilhan Omar, she publicly called for his impeachment.
Yeah.
So I believe that's who it was.
Yeah.
So I hope that gains some traction. And I heard that we might be hearing from Jenny Thomas in the insurrection, that she might be coming to an interview.
Oh, she's fighting it now.
Yeah, I guess so.
At first she was like, yeah, no, I want to correct the record, and now she's got a lawyer, and it's like, oh, it's not a good time.
I don't feel like we're, it's a conflict of interest, particularly when he has already used his power in the court to support her agenda.
Well, yeah, to protect her.
Yes, and Trump.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that guy's got to go. I mean, anybody who perjures and has no respect for the right of law, for the law of perjury, has no respect for the laws that exist on this book. And these rogue decisions where they clearly have an agenda, which the Supreme Court should not have an agenda. That's not something that the position should include. To me, shows a form of corruption. And, any other job you lie in your interview and they find out later, like, you lose your job. Like, you don't get to keep that because I don't know. I'm ready for term limits.
I was listening to Dahlia Sipuk. I'm not sure how to say her last name. Anyway, on MSNBC, and she kind of follows the Supreme Court, and she was like, thinking in terms of there's something like a new test for gun laws. There's a new test for abortion. There's a new test for environmental rights or whatever. And then, once she's going through the whole list, and she's like, no. There's no new test for any of this stuff. It is simply what is on the agenda for, the far right. And, they were just sort of making not what the law says, but just making these decisions based on what the right wing wants. Yeah,
Roe v. Wade was not being challenged. What was being challenged is how many weeks can they count as viable. They weren't asking to have it overturned.
Right. So it's completely broken the Supreme Court, and obviously the Congress is also broken because of the whole like filibuster, and you can't get really anything done. I mean, that's two of our branches right there. So I I don't know.
I have a little bit of hope about the military, knowing like how many different generals opposed many of the things Trump tried to make them do. And maybe should do a little more research and find out specifically what those were. But I know that a few times he did try to use his authority to make things happen that they were like, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Didn't he want martial law at some point, and they refused? So kudos.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sucks because when I was in, there was definitely, we were entering into a period where Obama was president and actually started helping veterans and the military and giving more things to them. And people started saying, well, Republicans haven't done any of that for a long time. How can they say they're our branch? Because people used to say that. And then people, others would be like, well, then how come Obama's doing more for us? How come he's looking out more for us? Here is Ted Cruz trying to freeze the government, trying to freeze military pay while we're actively deployed in the middle of a war. And he wanted to do that. And seriously, it went straight around the military. They said, we will not work for a single second if you stop our pay, 1 second. And he had to back off of that because nobody was kidding. Nobody was kidding. We're not going to do anything. So after that, people were like, you know what? Maybe the Republican, it's becoming very clear that the Republicans are just using the veterans as like a political cudgel to just beat their, point into people. And meanwhile, if you listen to what military and veterans are actually saying, it didn't match. And it was really disgusting how often they speak for us, but don't listen to us. And I don't know the state of it right now. I got out in 2012, and I know that there has been an active influence of white supremacists back in there trying to make a difference. But when I was in, I would have said there's no way that the military would support this rogue Supreme Court going on. So I don't know. I don't know. I got to leave a little bit of hope in them. Anyways. It's not easy to be hopeful. Okay, let's finish.
Okay, yeah. So what can be done about this? Is fighting this is a bit different than working against other organizations, because these people are not honest actors in how they are going about things, and they are expecting to get large scale pushback too. As Rachel said, they do want to be the victims. They want to see themselves as oppressed as well. And so what some of the things we have to do is that we have to get the people who are Christians in this country to start looking at the theology with this and figuring out, are these really the things that their religion, is this conducive with their religion, with their religious views? Because there are a lot of people who are accidentally going along with this agenda without actively knowing about it too. And the
QAnon.
biggest thing, what's that?
QAnon. A lot of those people think that they're fighting a pedophile ring.
Yes. And it what we have to be doing too is we cannot stop talking. We have to keep pressure up. We have to keep movement on this. This is not something. One of the things they believe is that we, the American people, are going to eat it. That we're going to sit down, that we're going to complain for a little while. Maybe they're going to see some movement in the polls, but that's all it's going to be.
And that's where we have to not do that, because
we have less than 50% voter turnout for midterm elections. And you look at the last major election and we won by 8 million people. If we can just get these people to get up and get out of bed, get out of their house, quit saying voting doesn't work, we have to do it. Whatever it is, if you got to give rides to your neighbors, please take people in so they can vote. And also, there's already being violence threatened at the polls this year. So don't be in your phone or in your book. Keep your head on a swivel and pay attention. Know what's going on around you.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing we have to do right now and start with is we have to be there for each other, start building communities and networks and this sort of thing so that we can also mitigate as much of the pain that they're going to try to cause us as possible too. There's an interesting story on a report on CNN's website today about how far people are going to be from a place to get an abortion. And how and it takes into account, where also they believe that the laws are going to change too. And there are a lot of people who are going to need a lot of help right now.
Right.
And we need to start building these networks to help people right now, because we're going to need them for even more people soon. Because they're going to keep coming for more and more people.
I mean, and to be honest, it would help with other, issues that are like staring us in the face, like climate change, because you're going to need those communities, that support system, the mutual aid to fight, the devastation that's coming. I mean, it's yeah.
we have to be willing. Part of this too, and it is a thing on the left. Is the left is always kind of herding cats. Getting us to agree on anything. We have to be willing to build coalitions, at least temporary partnerships against these forces that are arraying against us on the far right. Because, we've seen Cheney is, come out and really actually fought against Trump and that sort of thing. And if it means making a short-term alliance with neoconservatives even in order to stop the country from actually being destroyed.
Right.
That's something that we are going to have to really think about. And it's a lot of the ideological purity that we're going to see on the left. And I know that we all absolutely hate having to vote over and over and over again for the lesser of two evils. That is, just been a thing my entire adult life for sure.
So please vote for new progressive Democrats.
Well, I think it's also like you got to think in terms of voting for the people who at their baseline kind of support democracy, because I think that's where we're at, I mean, it's like, like not everybody out there who's running for something thinks democracy's a good thing.
Right. And I've been telling people, like, when you're looking at your primaries, like, definitely check this person out, because I think some of these very conservative people are running as Democrats now just to, I can't help but think that's who Manchin is.
Well, Rachel, the point I was making is that we have to be willing to make larger coalitions that we might not have thought of before in this. That there are going to be people that we're going to have to work with that we don't necessarily ideologically agree with on everything, but do want choice. Do want bodily autonomy for all individuals. Do want equal rights protections, and and do want democracy at the core of it, because the people that we're against don't.
Yeah.
And
SCOTUS is definitely anti-democratic as well.
Yes, but we need to be starting dialogues across lines that we haven't necessarily before. I know on the left we love to know true Scotsman as much as we can, and I am the perfect da 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 or whatever type thing. But we need to start doing that. We need to start listening a lot more
Yeah.
Because
can you think of two groups?
Yes. Listening to groups and listening to groups that we have not been listening to.
No, I would like, can you think of specific groups who you think could buddy?
I mean, as I said, actually, I think that we actually could form some form of coalition with like neoconservatives, surprisingly, because they at least don't want the country falling to a theocracy.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like a lot of older Republicans also, I've been seeing a lot of them like step back out and say like, oh my God, this went a little too far here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, remember, when we fought fascism in World War II, it was a pretty unlikely alliance, the Allies.
Oh, yeah.
And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we're going to need that here internally, too. And
well, we're going to need some hacktivists out there to start.
Yes, absolutely.
More hacktivists. Social media is going to, I was listening to this story on newspapers where this newspaper decided a new protocol, the right to be forgotten, where rather than leaving people's like mistakes up on the internet forever, they could appeal to them and show them how things are. And then they decided to vote individually. And the thing that they were most worried about was that if they don't start regulating themselves, then the government's going to come and step in to the media and start regulating it. And these social media, they're not regulating themselves enough. I mean, we've seen Facebook be used as a tool to organize genocide. And if we can't get them to do enough, then people are going to start pushing for, okay, well, then let's step in. If they won't do it themselves, if they won't protect this, like they made these very small but easily surmountable differences on, the content you can put on. And Facebook especially is very clearly, like, you can't say, like, men are trash. You will get banned for that. But people can say women are pretty much anything they want. They do it all the time. And they're like, that doesn't violate community guidelines. So there's definitely a very male supremacist ideology on Facebook. And I'm not a big fan of extra regulation if people can do it, but these social media companies have gone too far. They have way too much influence over everything that's happening. And frankly, they're going to need regulation since they will not protect people themselves. I don't know. That's just me, but.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing too is if you have thought about becoming a foster parent or adopting or anything right now is the time to get serious about that too, because a lot of these kids that are going to be coming are going to be going into these very, very fundamentalist, very extremist religious households.
Yeah.
And we need people to step up too and really, be there to help with that. And we need to keep from having further erosion of local laws, local and state laws too.
It's what's interesting, and people were making this point on Twitter quite a lot after Roe v. Wade, about all the babies are coming, but that there are already millions of kids in foster care that are not being adopted or whatever. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, why do you need this new crop? We've already got some here.
And there is a very serious child trafficking industry. And I don't think people realize that the United States is one of the top 10 countries in the world for human trafficking. And I do have a series planned to be doing that. I was working on a documentary series with a group. I don't know if we'll end up doing it, if I'll end up doing the radio series or if we'll end up doing the documentary series, but it is really bad. So some of these kids, particularly probably the not white ones, will end up being trafficked for various purposes. And I mean, it already happens. I mean, we did finally see Ghislaine Maxwell go to prison for trafficking absolutely to nobody. Who did she traffic to? So show us the list. Show us the list. She's the first person in the history of the country to go to prison for trafficking people to nobody. We get those lists. We had that Southern, like I showed you like a month ago, we finally got that Southern Baptist church leader list, hundreds of people deep, who are all involved in this child pedophilia and trafficking ring. And we got the list. We need this list. And I just know that it's going to be so full of people all up and down the government, you know, judges in all levels. Makes me so mad. But yeah, an overabundance of children, like, of course, they're gonna be used as tools in one way or the other. That is basically, because you know, a lot of these Christian circles, like I mentioned, also, they are okay with pedophilia. They're like, oh, being mature is knowing that a 13-year-old is old enough to consent. And you're like, what? You're saying this out loud and I can't even get this taken down off of social media? I like reported people who say things like this and they're like, there's no community guideline problems here. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
What are you talking? Like most of their list of friends are children. I'm working on an investigative piece I'm doing on TikTok right now. If you can't tell, hashtag Uncle Rob is be disturbed. Look at them. Some of them are okay. There is an actual guy named Uncle Rob, and that's his persona, but they are buried under there on TikTok. So keep an eye on your kids' TikToks and see if there's any Uncle Rob hashtags in there.
The last point I do want to make is that it is also it is also now time to get volunteering in your community too. And this is a big thing about this is get volunteering in your community and get volunteering in ways that are going to be helpful to the people that are going to need it. If you're doing something that's going to help the children out right now, if you're doing something that's going to be helping even just to improve the ways that we interact with each other. There are a lot of women's shelters out there. They're going to need a lot of support soon. There's a lot of ways to get involved. And it is time to start giving some of your time to doing that if you're not already to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good a good place to end a very dark conversation.
Yeah, we do have an opportunity. That's the point. There is the possibility that we can stop them, but people have got to quit being like, it's not that big a deal. It's not that bad. This is bad. This is bad. There is an agenda. This has been under the works for a very long time. And they don't have a good goal. The goal is not. No. It's not okay. And these people already
far more
do.
Of us than them. Yes.
There are. And they already do things that are not in line with most people's morals. Like, I hate how like crazy their agenda is, because convincing people that this is their agenda makes you sound crazy.
Yeah.
Not to mention that they love to spread, false, like I can't help but feel like Q is a tool of this group and community to, because like it's really easy to rope people in over children trafficking, because the thing is, there is a real problem there. However, that group doesn't do anything about it. They think, oh, all these people that they told us to follow, they're going to do something about it. Trump is going to do something about it. Made the zero tangible moves other than actually molesting children. And I've read the court transcript of what he did to that 13-year-old girl on Epstein's Island. Like, just believing all the wrong people, getting a little bit of correct information, and then so easily steered in the wrong places. My dog can recognize when I'm getting a little upset. She's over here like
trying to calm you down.
Yeah, she's like, "Are you cool right now?" I'm cool. Yeah. We're good.
Yeah,
I'm fine, baby.
Sorry, it wasn't as funny an episode as usual.
Oh no, I mean, we do various episodes, and the thing is,
that's the point of this show is I want to talk about the things that mainstream media either